much about kind of incorporating the music into your daily routine so that it's not just like practice for 9 minutes, done.
Hi, Kathryn. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am good. And where are you connecting from?
From San Diego, California.
We're all
Yeah.
on the West Coast. I don't actually get a lot of West Coast guests, so it's
I
kind of
know. I
nice.
feel like we're kind of out here on our own. Like we're
Yeah, we need
everyone's in the
to
Midwest and the East
connect
Coast.
more.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
So I'm very delighted to talk to you because I have interact with you in Facebook and a number of other places, and I've always found you to be a really fun and cheery harp and voice teacher. So it's really lovely to have you here. But before we get into all that good stuff, tell us about your music journey and how did you end up with the harp?
yeah. I feel like most people have some sort of like aha moment. They heard a harp or they were at a festival and something happened and it was this, sort of magical calling, and that didn't happen for me. It's like the weirdest story ever. So I was a teenager, and I was obsessed with Ireland and the Irish history and Celtic everything, and this was the days before YouTube and little apps and iPhones and stuff. So I was listening to a podcast on the internet, like on a website, which is what you used to have to do. And it was all about like bards and the bardic tradition and storytelling. And the guy hosting the podcast, I think I was 16, was like, if you really enjoy this stuff, if you really love Celtic history and music, you should just go buy a harp right now. Like, just pause
Ah,
the podcast and go buy a harp. And I was like, okay. So
on it.
so I paused the podcast and I went out into the living room and was like, Mom, can I have a harp? She's like, what? I'm like, what? And actually, it turned out that my aunt, my mom's oldest sister, also played the lever harp. So she sort of steered me in the right direction. And we went to Sylvia Wood's harp shop, which I think was in Glendale, California at the time. And so I bought my first triplet harp. It was a little triplet Avalon, which I don't think they make anymore. It was about 25 strings. I still have it though. And I bought that from Sylvia, by which I mean my dad bought that for me from Sylvia. And yeah, and then kind of the rest was history. I had already played piano and been singing since I was a small child, so it wasn't totally out of the blue that I wanted yet another musical instrument. But yeah, that was kind of my my harp journey. And I was very fortunate to have a teacher nearby where I lived at the time named Cynthia Ardish, and she's not really on the social media places, but the older harpers tend to know who she is, and she studied in Ireland and Castle Connell with Janet Harbison, and so I kind of got trained up in that tradition and sort of ended up on a whole really intense like apprenticeship with her during my last year and a half of high school, where I was with her kind of all the time. I mean, I sat in on lessons and I took my own lessons and I sat in on her gigs, and she taught me everything you could ever want to know about the music industry and harp.
That is
Harping.
very
So
intense.
yeah, it was very intense. I definitely got my time in the first 18 months of of my studies.
And how was it like observing someone working as a professional harpist for you? How have that helped you in becoming who you are now?
Yeah, it was really interesting, and I was so fortunate that she was or still is a very sort of down to earth, realistic person. Because I think a lot of times when you think of becoming a musician, you're like, ooh, it's gonna be this, it's gonna be that, and you have kind of like sparkly fantasy ideas of what that life is going to be like. And she had a background where she previously worked for Disney, and so she really knew the industry, and that was the dog groaning in case somebody hears that.
You're a dog mom. I've learned that.
I am a dog mom. Yes, I am. She's here. But yeah, so Cynthia was really good about just giving me a very comprehensive and realistic view of what it was like. And so and it was all positive. I mean, it was great, but it was very just sort of yeah, I mean, a true apprenticeship in the oldest sense of the term, where it was like, okay, this is how you negotiate contracts, this is how much you do the thing, and so kind of all the behind the scenes stuff. And I actually had so much fun, I didn't want to go to college anymore. I wanted to stay home and become a harpist, and she was like, no, you should still go to college. And I was like, okay. So
Very realistic.
She was like, no, go to college. I was like, okay. And then I majored in music, so I was like, did I need to? Who knows? But
I think it worked out all right.
Yeah, it was fine. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's good
And
stuff.
something I really noticed when I first came across your video is when you start singing, I'm like, this person had vocal training. This is not just some random person singing. Tell us about singing. Have you been singing for a long time?
Yes, I have been singing. It's funny because I actually think of myself more as a singer than a harpist, which is like, this is probably the wrong audience to say that, but
Hey, voice and harp goes together really well.
But my family has all been in the theater. I mean, half my family are musicians or were trained in music, and so singing was something that I grew up with from a very, very early age. I mean, it's like I don't even remember a time when I wasn't singing. It just doesn't exist. And so we did musical theater, and I did a lot of choir growing up, and I'm an only child, and my folks used to put on these like community variety shows in our hometown through their voice teacher, and I didn't want to be left out. So I was like, I want to go too. So they let me start taking singing lessons when I was 7 with the teacher there, and I mean, we weren't doing anything very extreme, but it, we just kind of started the process and then continued on, and actually was a voice major in college for both my undergrad and my master's in vocal performance, and my master's degree is actually in opera. So yeah, fun fact. And I did work, I still do actually work pretty regularly in the classical music world, mostly choral, professional choral work now. But I did a little bit of opera chorus before I decided to jump ship and go all in with the Celtic harp and singing. So yeah.
That's fun. How was it for you to blend the sort of more classical style singing with a Celtic harp? Like, do you find that to be a very unique combo?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the challenges is, especially with the lever harp, because it has a very different sound from a pedal harp, at least to my ears. I don't know. And maybe it depends on the lever harp. But I think trying to find the balance between just the stylistically, and what I was always kind of raised, in the school of thought with singing, that it's like, if you're a really good singer, you can sing anything, anything that you want to sing. And so I really tried to take all the good technical information that I got in my classical training, but really study the traditional style and try to incorporate as much of that as possible. I think choral singing translates a little bit better than opera, because opera's all about volume, really. It's really about volume in America. And I mean, it's not just about that. I have many friends who are opera singers. I don't want to offend them, and they're doing wonderful things. But yeah, it's just a different. It's all about creating your own resonance with your body, which is not really necessary in folk music, because you're usually with a microphone, or you're doing different kinds of things. It's kind of a more intimate environment. So there were some differences there, as far as the stylistic choices, I guess.
Now, for those who haven't perused your YouTube channel, I highly recommend them to do it, because it's full of little surprises. How would you describe your music? Because you're pretty eclectic. I quite enjoy it, actually.
And I think that comes from my musical background of, like, I loved musical theater. I went through my opera phase. I've done choral singing my whole life, and I've loved Celtic music for a long time, and just only about a year ago started really studying the Sean Nós traditional Irish singing style, which has been really fun and hard and interesting. Yeah, so I feel like it's a pretty, I don't know, it's just a weird sort of whimsical mix of everything in my head. I don't...
Whimsical actually is a really good word to describe it.
Yeah, when I had to categorize it for the album, because they make you like put a genre, and I was like, you tell me, man. But I think I classified it technically under world music, because it is kind of that to me is the best kind of mixing category that I could come up with. Because I love Lorena McKennitt and all the kind of like Middle Eastern influences she has in her music, and I love Joni Mitchell because she's bomb, and so it's like I just love good music, and I try to kind of bring all those pieces together. U2 love you too. So it is kind of weird. I don't really have like one style that I necessarily go for, but that's part of the
Good.
fun.
It's full of surprises. I think it is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of fun, you're sitting in a room that you
I
film
am.
a lot of your very awesome
Yes.
YouTube video again, which is like what really caught my eyes. Like, this is really interesting. I love it. And I need to ask you about this room. What
Yes.
do I need to do to get a room like this? Is it hard to convince someone in your home to have a dedicated space
Well,
for filming?
I'm very fortunate that I rent my house from my parents. I do pay
Okay, so
rent. I do
number
pay
one,
rent. It's not free.
someone that you need, someone that is on board with what you're doing.
Yes, and you know, we have a really strong theater background, I was like, hey, can I paint these walls a really extreme color? And actually I need to do like a whole tour because there's a lot of
Yeah, you
my
should.
mom was looking to offload all the family antiques, and so, which like
Ooh.
sounds really posh. It's not posh. It's just like stuff we've had around for a long time. Um, and
They
so
have characters,
this
you
is it.
know?
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of build or decorate a room worthy of that kind of steampunk Victorian style. I call it Dorian Gray meets Slytherin House, which I'm a Hufflepuff, which is kind of ironic, but you know, what can you do? I'm probably the only Hufflepuff who wanted to be a Slytherin. But
You can be all of them. You can play
exactly.
the different Harry Potter
There you
theme
go.
music in your
Yeah.
video because there's already some in there, so you might as
Right.
well explore it, I think.
Yeah, so I really just wanted a place to film something that looked nice and where I could kind of dress it up and make it be. So I stenciled these walls by hand,
Wow.
took a very long time. I had one stencil, and so I had to like
That's dedication right there.
yeah, and I had a whole plan for how I wanted to do a big reveal, which ultimately I got sidetracked with other projects, and which was the Halloween series that I did last year, the 13 Days of Halloween. And so that kind of became my deadline, so I think I stenciled the whole, I mean, it's a small room, it's not that big, but I stenciled the whole room, I think, in about 5 days. Probably took about 30 to 36 hours of stenciling after painting the green
Oh my goodness.
on the walls. I know, I'm crazy, but I'm also like thrifty budget lady, so I like thrifted all the things that were not like from, you know, the family storage unit. So yeah, so like the little wall decor and all kinds of fun stuff. Yeah, next door. Next door is my friend. I don't know if you have that in Canada. Maybe it's just an American thing.
No, we
It's
don't.
like
We do have Bed Bath and Beyond though, but I don't think they give you the
no,
same
next door is
vibe.
like it's like Facebook for neighborhoods, and people will
Oh,
like
okay.
sell like
All
their,
right.
you know,
Oh,
hey, I
that
have
could
a
be
wall
fun.
thing of candles for like $20. I'm like, me. So
That could be fun.
yeah, so that's where I got most of the stuff. Plus, I needed a place to store all the equipment and costumes.
Yes, I've seen some of those in your Halloween videos.
Yes, in the Halloween videos.
Yes.
Again, coming from a very theatrical family, that just is stuff we have. We used to have 6 closets full of
Oh,
costumes when I
wow.
was growing up. Everything from like medieval times up through the 1980s. And now I guess the 90s is actually an era. So that, you know, have that.
I like that you're bringing your different sort of interests and background into one part, and the end result is really amazing. I really enjoy it.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you.
Which one was your favorite video that you have made so far?
Oh, that's so hard. I mean, I think
Okay, maybe you can pick two. I don't know. It's
yeah,
hard to
I was
pick one
gonna
favorite, isn't it?
it is really hard. I mean, I think I really enjoyed the result of the Lord of the Rings video that I
Mm.
did with the elf choir, because that was kind of just one of those like on my mind, like it was stuck in my head that I really wanted to do, and I actually I filmed the whole thing in a day, which I don't recommend. I don't recommend that. It was like a 12-hour filming day. It was totally psychotic. And but I love, you know, I love Lord of the Rings, and the whole soundtrack is amazing. So I loved being able to do that. I think my favorite one to film was probably one of the color songs, which is the orange one, because I actually made that orange skirt with all the leaves on it. I hand sewed like
Oh,
360
wow.
leaves onto this skirt, um, which is for a 3-minute video is kind of probably not realistic, but that's what I do.
You should do it. Use that again for this year. Do something different.
I
with
should
it,
actually.
maybe.
I should
I think
reuse
you
it
should.
for sure. I
Yeah.
definitely should. And that was fun because my dad helped me build the bonfire, and I was trying to learn how to film at night. And like, I'm not a filmmaker. I'm just learning on the fly. You know, how to do the lights and the stuff and the right time of day to make it look right, so it transfers to the whole thing. So yeah, that was a family event. I drove up to my folks' place and filmed it there because they have a nicer backyard than I do. So
It worked out
yeah,
really well.
those are probably my two favorites: the orange one and the Even Star, the Lord of the Rings one. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about your album because you mentioned
Yeah.
that. Tell us about your inspiration, and this is your first album, isn't it?
It is. It is my first album. Man, I've been trying to make an album for almost a decade. It's been a long haul, and I actually had recorded a different. Some of the songs were the same, but a different version in grad school, and because I could use their facilities like for free as a student. But it turned out that the lovely, well-meaning sound engineer didn't quite have the experience with the harp, and so none of the tracks were usable. Which I didn't find out till after I graduated and, could no longer use the facilities. So that kind of put it on hold. And I don't know, I think it was just things were going well with the YouTube stuff, and I was enjoying that. And so it was, I think it was last fall that I started to really plan the whole thing out and what I wanted to do and the kinds of stories I wanted to tell and incorporate. And then, we had many technology weirdnesses of mysterious white noise just from nowhere that kept popping up in recordings, which no one to this day understands. Finally, the poor sound engineer just had to spend like hours taking it out because there was nothing we could do. So we actually, there was kind of like a false start back in April where I tried to release a single and then it turned out that it wasn't going to work and I had spoken too soon. So I just sort of banked on, social media, the forgetfulness of social media to just nobody noticed that happened. I'm not famous, so it's fine. And then we got back to recording. So we didn't manage to get the recordings done until June. And I recorded,
not that long ago.
Yeah, I recorded almost all of it at home, here in this room, actually, over by the closet. And because I was kind of on a deadline, because I had a concert date planned for last weekend, yeah, at the end of July, and I was trying to get it done by then so I could have the copies, there to sell at the concert. And so I ended up having to record, I think, 8 of the 11 tracks in 6 days. Which I also do not recommend. Don't do anything that I do. I don't recommend doing anything that I end up doing because it just ends up being ridiculous. But yeah, so my poor little dog was pouting on the bed for many hours a day while I recorded. So I did all the arrangements, except there are a couple on there that actually my aunt did. My aunt who plays the harp, she did some of the arrangements and then I adapted them. And then one of the harp solos called Sedona Sunrise was written by my teacher. So I kind of wanted it to be sort of I don't know, if this is the only album I make, this is the one this is what I want it to be. And so that's kind of how the whole thing got started and completed, and here we are. We finally made it.
I think it's a really nice sort of snapshot of who you are right now in time as a musician. It has your voice, it has some really beautiful just instrumental tracks as well. And show us the cover art of your album, which I really love.
Oh, thank you. Yes, here it is. I'll try to get it so you can see it properly. And there it is. And that was, again, things that don't go to plan. Just added to the list of things that don't go to plan. So we had taken, a friend of mine took this, who's just a really great amateur photographer, and she and I had done a photo shoot back in April when everything is green, because in Southern California, your period of time in which things are green is like 2 months out of the year. It's basically February and March. That's it. That's all you get. Then everything dies. And so we were trying to get it done then, but it just wasn't quite what we wanted. So we ended up having to go back to the park where we took the photos again, like at the end of May, beginning of June, and trying to find little bits of greenery that were still left to do it. And it turned out that when she did it, she accidentally did something, and again, I'm not a camera person, but something with the ISO so that it came out just a little bit grainy. And she was like, oh no, we're gonna have to do this again. I was like, actually, let's see if we can work with this. So I did all the graphic design and photo editing and everything. So I kind of upped the graininess. That's the Joni Mitchell inspiration of her. She had an album called Blue.
I loved grains. Yeah. I was an old school film photographer, and I will buy the high ISO flame just to get the grain.
Yes, exactly. And I was like, we're just gonna lean into this because something needs to happen. And I mean, I think it came out pretty good. And then I just took a little for the back and one of the insides. It's actually just. We took a wide frame of the same shot, and so it's little corners of that same shot. And then the inside here is actually my harp teacher's. She has a little eco garden that she's doing like eco stuff now. And so it's a native garden, and she just took a picture, and I was like, "Can I use this?" So she's like, "Yeah, sure." So I put it in there, but yeah, I basically did the whole thing myself. I did I didn't take the photo, and I didn't do the mixing and the mastering, but I did the recording and the arrangements, except for those few. And I did all my own backing vocals on the tracks that have backing vocals. And then I did all the artwork, uploading, and what is it called? Formatting. That's what I'm...
And now you're promoting the album too, I presume.
And now I'm promoting the album too, yeah.
So you're basically all in one.
Truly all in one, which I think we all kind of end up doing that. That's the age we're in, right? The DIY age. I'm sure that's what it will be called in the history books. The age of DIY.
The age of DIY.
Not the dark ages, right. But the do-it-yourself.
So what's the name of the album, and where can you find it?
Yes, thank you. It's called Echoes from Home. And boy, do I wish I had come up with that title, but I didn't. My teacher did. And I was like, it was supposed to be a working title, and I was like, actually, that's really good. Can I keep that? And she said, yeah, sure. So, and it really just came from the idea that, especially as an American, a lot of times we don't know a lot about our heritage, and, we might have pretty strong ties to other countries and, Europe or wherever, but sometimes we don't know a lot about those actual people. So that's kind of, I talk about that in the little liner notes that I made for the album. It's like, I know a lot about my English heritage, but I don't know a lot about my Irish, even though it shows up in the DNA test, the 23andMe or the Ancestry whatever thing. But I don't know anything about it, so I just thought it's so interesting and kind of mysterious and mystical, and I just kind of wanted to capture that in musical form.
I like that you're using the music to explore sort of who you are, and I think in many ways that's what make music sometimes quite vulnerable but also so lovely at the same time, because you're showing a slice of yourself to us in a way that makes sense for you, which is in this case through singing and playing the harp, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's lovely. And I want to talk to you about singing and playing the harp, because you teach singing.
I do teach singing with the harp.
Yeah. A lot of people, myself included, want to sing and play the harp, but we cannot do it to save our lives. What are some of the common challenges you have observed in people who want to learn that?
Yeah, I'm a big mindset person, and which is not to say that, it's all just how you think about it, but it kind of is. And I think one of the biggest challenges that I've seen in my teaching, and also just kind of experienced as I was learning how to do it myself, is that the approach... This is my nerdy... Okay, I'm a nerdy person, so I do nerdy science things. So here's the nerdy explanation. So the nerdy explanation is that when we're playing the harp, it's all... I don't know what the actual technical term is, but sort of primary muscle groups, the kind you can move on command, right? You can do this with your hands. You can look at your hands and say, ooh, that finger is on the wrong string. And you can't do that with singing. It's invisible. It's inside you, and... I don't remember the exact percentage, but just ballpark, probably 80 to 90% of the muscles that are responsible for making the sound happen are involuntary or secondary muscle groups that you can't, flex your cricothyroid cartilage. No one can do that. That's not how it works. And, you know, I've talked about this in my breathing videos, like the diaphragm is an involuntary muscle. You can't make it to do anything. That's the point. That's what keeps you alive. And so I think it takes a very different approach between the two things. You know, it's really easy to sit down at the harp. Well, not easy, but simple to sit down at the harp and go, okay, I'm going to do these scales like this. And if I do it like this and move well, it's going to happen. You can't really do that with singing, because anytime you try to force it or make it be the same every day, your body's not the same every day. You didn't get the same amount of sleep. You didn't eat the same foods. You don't feel the same about what's happening in your life. And all of that kind of affects really physiologically the mechanism itself. And so I think there's a big shift that has to happen, particularly for people coming from an instrumental background into singing, is just this idea of the instrument being inside your body. That's just different. No matter how much we love and feel connected to the instruments that we play, they're never going to physically be inside our body. It's just not what's going to happen. So I think that's part of it. And then taking those two things and say, okay, now that I know these are very, very different, how in the world do I put them together? And I kind of take the approach of using the body as kind of the central, I don't know, the middle part of the Venn diagram, because that's the connecting. So I talk a lot about breathing with the harp as you play, so that you learn, if you can coordinate the breath a little bit, then it becomes a lot easier to coordinate the voice. And then there's also the hearing side of it. And this is where I kind of I feel like I've cheated a little bit, because I have such a strong choral background that I'm used to hearing multiple things at once and kind of holding my own part. And that's really the skill that's sort of required if you're going to play for yourself. You have to be able to kind of hear, okay, this is what my hand is doing, this is what my voice is doing, and how they fit together. So there's a lot that goes on, which that makes it sound scary and hard, but you don't start there. You start with little baby steps of, of like, okay, can I match the pitch? Great. Can I play the chord and now sing a little bit? That's why in a lot of my arrangements you'll see kind of an alternating, more conversational approach, where you play something and then while the chord is ringing you sing, and then while you're holding a note then you play something else, so you get a little bit of a chance to go back and forth, as opposed to actually having to do them both at the same time. Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountain side. The summer's gone and all the roses falling. It's you must go, and I must bide. Yeah.
That seems a little bit less daunting than...
Yeah, exactly.
Put the two together, like right out of there. So
Yeah.
you have a Facebook group that you give some tips. So I'm going to put the link in the video for those who are interested in checking it out. And you also publish sheet music for harp and voice. So if we want to start giving this a crack, which one do you think will make a good entry level one?
Yeah, so they actually kind of go in a little bit of an order. So the most beginner one is The Water is Wide, because that's a tune that I feel like a lot of people, at least people who play harp, a lot of us tend to know that one. It tends to be a little bit more familiar, and then the harp part is pretty simple, and I can't remember how many keys I have that in. So that's the other thing too, is a lot of times you might just be singing in a key that's not comfortable for you. So I publish them all in different keys, like usually at least 2 keys, sometimes 3 if the range is a little bit extreme, like low, middle, and high, so you can find something that's comfortable. So The Water is Wide is definitely the easiest one to play and sing, and then because it has a very repetitive kind of harp part, so you can kind of get a little bit meditative with that, and then focus on the singing. And then the other 2 beginner ones I have are Scarborough Fair and Green Sleeves, and I think those are kind of comparable but different. It sort of depends on what you're comfortable playing. If you're more comfortable with traditional like triad chords, then green sleeves is probably going to be easy. Or if you're more comfortable with kind of more open shapes, if you've been doing a lot more of the kind of Celtic style, then Scarborough Fair might be easier for you. Yeah. And then I have other harder ones, but Annie Laurie and I have Danny Boy, both of which are on the album, so there's sheet music for those. Those are more kind of in the intermediate level, I would say. And hopefully I'll do more soon, but I dropped off the social media bandwagon while I was desperately trying to get this album done. So
and it's done.
It's done, so now I can hop back on with sheet music and answering questions and helping people out with the singing stuff. So yeah.
I have a buddy in my harp group who takes lessons with you, and she really enjoyed learning from you, and you seem like a really fun teacher. Tell us about yourself as a teacher. Who do you work with, and can we do harp and voice with you at the same time? Do we need to do harp and voice separately? Like, how does it all work if we want to?
Yeah, that's all really good questions. So the administrative side of things is if you already play harp and you want to study both harp and voice, we can do them together. If you've like never touched a harp, then I usually recommend we do some harp lessons first.
Makes
before,
sense.
Because otherwise that's just like way too much information. And then we can kind of add singing in later. But yeah, if you have a harp background, then we work. We'll usually do a little bit of just singing. It kind of depends on the person. I guess that's really, I am really a sort of one-on-one. Like I want to know where people have come from and what they want and how they learn best, so that I can make it be helpful and enriching for them. And so if you have no vocal training and you want vocal training, then we might spend a few lessons kind of just getting basics down with breath and finding a song. And then we do learn the parts separately, which is something I am a huge advocate of. So yeah, we'll learn the singing part to a song, we'll learn the harp part, and then we can, work on putting them together. So that's kind of the process. And then me as a teacher, I think I tend to, when I was working at studios, I always was kind of known as, my studio kind of like became the refugee studio from like students who were like from other studios that were like really intense and kind of maybe not necessarily geared towards hobby folks, and so they all sort of came to me, and so that kind of became what I did. I teach mostly adults. I do have a couple kiddos, but mostly adults, and the hobby folks, or folks who are maybe working professionally but like for fun. It's not like their main
so
gig.
Like me.
Yeah, basically. And I think my whole big thing is, if you're getting stressed and if you're getting miserable, that's the only way you're doing it wrong. Because for crying out loud, I mean, we have things like taxes and politics to make us miserable. Music should not be on that list.
I agree.
And so, yeah, right. And so I really try to get to know my students. I mean, I want to ask, like, how you are and what your week is like. I think sometimes, people walk in like, what are we playing today? It's like, whoa, how was your week? Like, like, what? Because you're a human, and the life that you lead affects, the music in your life and vice versa. So I'm very much about kind of incorporating the music into your daily routine, so that it's not just like, practice for 9 minutes, done. I mean, if you're like a type A person that really wants to have lists and like that brings you joy, rock on, like I'm happy for you. But I don't ever want to like force that on people that just want to play. We just want to play music. You don't want to learn to read sheet music, we're not going to learn to read sheet music. I mean, this is for you to enjoy. And that's, I think, one of the things that I love about the Celtic tradition that I've kind of taken from them, is that, they really live with their music in a way that I think a lot of Americans don't. It's flashy, it's something we perform, it's not just something like, we don't just go down to the pub and play every Friday night, which I think we should. And so I kind of try to bring that into lessons where it's like, let's play stuff, we'll learn stuff, play stuff, learn stuff, play stuff, learn stuff, play stuff. And so then you kind of get, hopefully it becomes something that you want to do, and that gives you a reprieve from all of the stressful things in your life.
I
Yeah,
like
so I guess
that.
that's kind of my teaching philosophy.
Yeah, I still feel like, yeah, as a hobby harpist myself, I feel like you can still feel like you're making progress with your
Oh
instrument,
yeah.
but not in a like let's do 2 hours of practice a day kind of way, Like we just don't have that
Yeah.
ability
Yeah.
to do that. Not everyone anyway, right?
True.
So I
I
think it's
mean,
great to work
yeah.
with a teacher who understand that and be able to
Yeah.
work with that.
Yeah, so I try to do that. I mean, I have a couple of, I've got one leftover student from my classical music days who's a teenager and she wants to study opera, and it's like, okay, then we're having a different conversation. Then we're having the conversation about discipline and like, you have to practice if you want to do this like professionally. But
Mm,
but that's because that's what she wants to do, and it's not an idea that I'm trying to force onto her. So,
mm.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
really try to
important to
teach.
share our learning goal with you when we work with you so that you can
Yeah. And
have
if you
that.
don't have one, if you're like, I don't know, then we'll just get going and eventually it'll sort of manifest itself. Um,
Mm.
but I think that again also comes from my training that I received from my harp teacher, which was so just it was it's weird. I mean, the way that she did it, I don't it's really odd. It becomes so much a part of your life. It's like you kind of don't even notice that you're learning things. And then
Mm.
all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, wow, I'm playing this. I don't even know how that happened. Which I don't know. I think there's something kind of magical and fun about that.
I think so. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think well as our learner, I think a lot of us are very um fixated on like are we spending enough time? Are we making enough progress? We're
Yeah.
always like trying almost too hard. I think there is
Yes.
something to be said about just being at ease with your instrument and just enjoy it and then feel good
Yeah.
about doing it. And there's so much about that I think can help out
Yeah.
more than busy life, right? So.
Yes, exactly. I totally agree. And that's what I try to give my adult students, And a lot of them, to kind of go back to that whole like refugee analogy, it's like, a lot of them had very negative experiences as children in music lessons. They were kicked out of choir, they were kicked out of music class, their teacher told them they didn't have enough talent. I mean, just really mean and horrible things that happened. And so I kind of look at my role as operating on both ends of the spectrum with the adult students, trying to help heal from that and create the safe space that it's like you're not going to be in trouble here. I don't care if you didn't touch the harp at all. I mean, I care about you, but it's like that's not why we're here. If the only time you play your harp is when you're sitting in my living room or meeting with me on Zoom, that's okay. That doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean that you're not doing enough. And so I try to give that to the adult students and then kind of shield the young ones from ever having to have an experience like that to recover from, because I just think that's so. I mean, I get so mad sometimes when I hear stories about things, the way that folks have been treated. It's like, okay, give me their number. I'm gonna call them up. Like, because music is such a wonderful thing, and I think so many people, um, too many people have not had the opportunity because they were told they weren't enough, and that's just not okay as far as I'm concerned. I think it's for
Mm.
everyone, and so that's kind of, I don't know. I try to do my little piece for society through music lessons.
And I love that. I think when I think about my personal experience as a kid, and thank goodness my teacher wasn't mean or anything, but it really the process that I went through didn't leave me with the love for music.
Yeah,
I feel like I got put through a structure for the sake of
yeah,
doing whatever the exam and whatnot, and it just took the joy out of music, which should
yeah,
not be the case because music brings a lot of joy.
yeah.
So I much
I
prefer
totally
this, and
agree.
I did not touch an instrument for many years
Yeah.
because of that,
And
right?
that's true of a lot of adults, especially. And so I always have a conversation with parents when I get kids that start with me. It's like, and we make a deal, we make a little group deal, parent, student, and me, which is we do not talk about how much we practice. We don't do it. What we do is we set goals for sharing with your family, for sharing with your siblings, your grandparents at a holiday party, and whatever you have to do to meet that is what you do. If you can sit down and play it blindfolded, good for you. If you need to do more, then do more, because that's real life. And I don't know, maybe it's I also have some Scandinavian heritage, so maybe it's that part of me that's like, don't make work for the sake of making work. Like, do what you need to do and enjoy it so that it's something you want to do. And yeah, that's my whole goal, is to protect very intensely that love of music and the enjoyment, because I watch kids, that aren't my students, that perform, and they do all the exams and they win all the competitions, and I get nervous when I see that, because I'm like, how is that gonna go in the long run? I don't know, and so I try to just do my little piece for for the kiddos.
Yeah. Well, speaking of doing your piece in nurturing the world with music and education, you have a scholarship program that you're doing through Patron. Tell us about your Patron benefits, and what is the scholarship program about?
Yeah, so it's a fairly new thing, so shameless plug, go do the scholarship thing. But everyone was always encouraging me to get on Patreon, and you could do all these things because of all the videos you make and all the stuff that you do, and it just didn't feel right. I wanted it to not really be about me. Like, it's like we all want to get paid to just do whatever we want. That would be cool, but like, and I looked at some of the educational models, like I know a lot of other harpists do really successfully, and that's wonderful. But I'm an introvert, and I really like to know my students, and I'm not the sort of person, like, I can't do that on a big scale. Some people can know hundreds of people, like, really well, and I can't keep that much in my head. So I try to sort of keep those numbers down to what I can personally handle and invest a lot of time in. And so I thought, maybe a better way of doing it would be to develop something like a scholarship program, because one of the reasons that I sort of started delving more into the folk music over the classical music industry was that kind of sense of a little bit of elitism that can occur sometimes, where it's like, if you have more money, then you can afford the expensive instrument, you can afford the expensive lessons and the concerts and the this and the that, and I really disliked the idea of music being used as kind of a divider, instead of something that brings people together. So I wanted to make a scholarship program so that people who can't afford music lessons could afford them. And I actually finally pulled the trigger, as it were, when I had one student contact me on the East Coast, and she is working on getting her green card. She's originally from Mexico, and she's in that phase, she's trying to do it all by the book, and she's in that phase where she can't work while she waits for the paperwork to go through the next round. But she was so committed, and she so wanted to do harp lessons, and she had her little harp, and I just thought, for crying out loud, I can't, I wish I could get everybody lessons for free, but the electricity bill doesn't get paid by doing things for free, unfortunately. So I thought, maybe we could marry the two worlds of having that kind of support system in place. So all of the funds right now go towards her lessons, and then hopefully as we grow and get more, there'll be more spaces for more scholarship students, so that they can have lessons that they might not otherwise be able to have.
I think that is such a beautiful thing that you're doing, because the people who wants to learn the instrument are most likely going to be the one that is going to have the instrument with them for the rest of their life and enjoy it.
Exactly.
And when I think about people who were told by their parent to pick up an instrument, they might not have that same affiliation or love for the instrument as they grow up. So I think it's beautiful that you're doing this for those who are not able to take lessons. And I've talked to a lot of guests about how to make the harp more accessible, right?
Yeah,
I think
that's a tough one.
way you can do it.
But that's just one with a little way. Yeah.
Awesome.
The instrument itself is still tricky to get a hold of, but there's the harpsicles are great for that, and the little fireside guys, and a couple of other ones. So I'm glad that the harp makers are kind of doing what they can to help make it more accessible to everyone, without having to go out and cut down a tree and figure out how to build it yourself.
So I wouldn't trust myself in building from scratch.
No.
It's probably not going to be very...
No, I try to stay away from power tools. That's not... I usually injure myself.
Yeah,
all my injuries, I joke with my students, because I'm always ending up in braces. I'm like, this is not instrument related. This is always home improvement related.
I hope it's not from building this beautiful set. So.
Did I get what? I got a little. No, actually, I don't think I did. I exacerbated a little bit of tendonitis from all the stenciling. But I had that. That was a gardening injury. So.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, where would you like to see yourself 3 to 5 years from now as a harpist, singer, teacher? Like, what are some of your plans for the future?
Feels like that's a job interview question I always fail.
Yeah. I'm totally hiring you on.
I know, right? Oh my gosh. I mean, are we gonna get a visitation?
Is your guest here? Oh, look at that.
I have a guest here. This is Luna. Aww. You've probably seen her if you've seen the videos.
Is she your favorite in the lesson? Is she a student?
Oh yes, everyone loves Luna. She it's actually really funny. She will she like falls to sleep during the harp lessons, but during the opera lessons she like yowls. She can't.
Okay, I feel like, you know what, all harp teachers need to have a dog, because my kids will want to go to the harp teacher because she has a dog. I mean, they love the harp teacher, but they also love the dog. So right. I feel like harp teacher with kids.
One of my students posted something that was like, Luna proven to improve the quality of harp lessons by 20% or something. Like,
true.
Yes. Are you proven to improve? Yes. Aww. Yeah, I know. You're just so beautiful. Mm-hmm. So yes,
does she ask for harp music? Does she has like, a look for you to say like play for me?
Sometimes she'll just come up, like she did now, and be like, "Hey, I would like to insert myself into the situation." Mostly, she just wants attention. But yeah, she'll sometimes nap during the harp lessons, listening to beautiful harp music.
Very wise.
But yeah, where do I want to go? I mean, I would love to be able to do more albums. I have too many thoughts. I mean, that's really too many ideas. Too many thoughts, too many ideas. I'm probably the next thing is I'm going to see if I can learn how to do some of the audio engineering myself. Which is, I did the filming. I learned how to do the filming, so now we're going to see if I can do more of the audio stuff. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to do more of that and maybe do some more workshops and courses and stuff with singing with the harp. I'd really love to make that more accessible to the average person and less scary, because singing is scary. I think it's one of the scariest things anybody does, especially in the music world, because it's such a deep part of who we are. It feels very vulnerable and scary, and so I try to make it less scary. That's my goal. Make singing less scary for the harp world.
Yeah, because singing is scary, and then for a lot of us, playing the harp is scary.
Right.
So then we're double whammy when we try to do both.
Yeah, and exactly. So I think just trying to take a little bit of the pressure off and make it more fun. Zoom is actually a great tool for that, because then you can do the little workshops and then you're in your own space and no one can hear you. It's not like going to a group class and having to sing next to somebody else, which has benefits in and of itself, but I think it takes a little bit more real world courage than than being able to be on Zoom, sort of comfortably on Zoom.
And I like working with a teacher one-on-one, because you get the feedback and you have someone that is, your audience, but it's not someone that is going to judge you necessarily and tell you how awful you are.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And actually, sometimes that's what I do with new students. Is we just do it as an experiment. Let's just make the ugly sounds. Let's just make them all now, so that it's okay. We're all gonna make ugly sounds, and then that you won't die when that.
Right?
Because there is kind of that, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna die. Like, something terrible is gonna happen. Everyone's gonna hate me. It's gonna be, no one's ever gonna, people are gonna lose respect for me. I mean, it's amazing the internal dialogue that can occur when we're getting ready to share something, sort of that vulnerable with other people. So we try to make it fun. That's my goal. Make it fun and less scary. And I mess up all the time. In fact, I'll share a secret that I don't normally share, which is sometimes I mess up on purpose in lessons that I'm teaching. Just because it's good for students to know that I'm human.
You know what? Actually, it is. I can relate.
And
I
mean,
can go a little bit when my teacher make a mistake. Sorry,
yeah.
Josh.
I mean, sometimes it's not on purpose. Sometimes I do genuinely mess up. But sometimes, like, you know, and that's fine too. And it's like, well, that was terrible. And any of my students that have taken lessons from me have heard me say that about myself. Like, well, that was wrong. Let's try that again, you know?
Yeah. I think it's healthy because, you know, no one can be perfect 110%,
Exactly.
you know? So I think it's healthy. And it's also, if it's any help, for us student, when we see our teacher messing up and how they recover, we pick up tips and tricks from you on how we recover when we messed up, which is nice.
Exactly. Yeah. And in fact, I can't remember, somebody was telling me about like a study that they did recently that they were studying about learning, and if you were more open to making mistakes, you actually learned faster than if you were afraid to make mistakes. So I kind of like to, my lessons are also full of weird nerdy facts like that.
I like that. Yeah, I like that because my husband will tell me like fail fast, fail often. Just,
yeah,
right.
It's like, just, you know, we do it wrong, and then, you know, it's fine, and then we discover that we live and we survive. And I mean, it sounds, to our logical brain, it sounds ridiculous to say, because it's like, of course I'm not going to die from playing a wrong note, but that's not how it feels on the inside, you know. And that's a real thing. So yeah, lots of that. And I also do incorporate a lot of Alexander technique and body mapping, which some people don't know. I have a video on that if you want to go deep on Alexander technique and body mapping, but it's basically just sort of that awareness of the physicality of the body, and how your perception of the way your body is put together and the way your body moves actually affects what you do, and which can be kind of a fun thing. We were doing sort of hand mapping with a student yesterday, and she was like, "Oh yeah, my finger actually goes all the way down." It's like, yeah, this is all bone that goes from here. This is the length of your finger. It has a knuckle there, and this is actually how long it is. Like, there's no like one hand thing. That's not a thing. It's finger. And it's kind of amazing how those little subtleties can affect playing and singing and all sorts of fun stuff. I could go on forever.
We need a follow-up conversation to talk about these.
We'll do one on body mapping.
Part 3. Yeah. We have lots of topic lined up with you already.
Yeah. See, this is people are like, why don't you write down all your ideas? I'm like, because I would do nothing else all day long except write down ideas. Like, I can't. And so I just eventually I had to just trust that God and the universe would bring back to me the ideas that I most needed to act on, because I have too many thoughts.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you got the album done and you have one idea out of the way.
One idea.
So now you can go back to the other ones.
Yes, exactly. Room with the walls done.
We'd love to see more videos from you in this.
Yes, we will be getting back on the video train.
Yeah, it's almost Halloween, so you might. Well, I say almost, but you know, it's like Christmas. You better plan months.
I'm having some thoughts. I won't back myself into a corner by over-promising, but I have some thoughts on Halloween this year, so we'll see if I get more weird things to...
Okay, so we'll need to subscribe to your YouTube channel.
Yes, definitely. And I promise there will be more videos there soon. I know it's kind of empty right now, but they will be forthcoming.
Yeah. What other social media platforms are you on?
Oh gosh, I'm on all of them. Facebook, Instagram. Actually, that's not true. I'm not on all of them. That's a lie.
Most of them.
Yeah. I mean, I have accounts on like TikTok and Twitter, but I don't really use them. I mostly got them just to make sure that I had my name. But yeah, exactly. But yeah, Facebook and Instagram are kind of the big ones, and then YouTube, of course, the Patreon.
Yes.
People keep telling me I should stream on Twitch, but I'm not convinced yet, and so we'll see. That's yet another.
I like YouTube better.
I like
YouTube.
YouTube.
Always be there when it's streaming and happening.
Yeah, well, and I saw one gal who does like the live streams on Twitch, and then she'll like post excerpts to YouTube. I'm like, that could be fun, but I think that's gonna be down the line a bit. After I learn how to become an audio engineer and, make more costumes and do better.
As if you're not wearing enough hats already.
I'm not, definitely
let's just put a couple more on there.
Put a couple more on and then go do some, like, professional choral music on the weekends.
Right? Get it all in. I think you need 40 hours a day.
Basically, yes. That's what I...
Yeah. That is the conclusion that the Talking Harps team has come to. Is if you want to, if you love the harp and you want to do all the things, you need at least 40 hours a day.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think that's good.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you for having me.
Getting to know you, and so awesome to see the interview happening in this room there. I'm gonna keep an eye on your YouTube channel to look for any new videos. Definitely check out Kathryn's Facebook group. Lots of really good information on singing and playing. And then I know the next step, if we want to dive deep, is to take a lesson from you, because that's what my friend did, or 2 or 3.
Yeah, there you go. We have openings. So yeah, and I'll hopefully be getting back to doing more videos in the Facebook group. But yeah, everything kind of went on hold for the album. So now we can restart everything back up again in time for the fall.
And congratulations again on your album, which
Thank you.
I have found out I can purchase it from Canada. Shipping is a little bit expensive, but
the shipping is expensive, and I'm sorry, I have no control over that.
That's okay. That's the price we pay for living in Canada, but totally worth it. So I'm looking forward to receiving the album.
Yes, it shipped today, this morning, after I took the dog to the groomer.
It shouldn't be that bad, right? You were saying just drive it up the coast.
Right? Yeah, just straight up, straight shot.
Straight shot. It shouldn't be too bad.
It should be fine. So hopefully, So when that arrives, then we'll publicize that it's available to be purchased, probably in limited quantities, because I am a single human that does all the things myself, as we've discussed at length. So I think there's only, now 29 copies, because you bought one, so there's only 29 copies available right now.
I have been streaming them, so they are also available.
That's the trick, isn't it? It's like if you want to support artists, buy the album and then go stream it. Yeah. Because then they get both.
Exactly. I think that's more than fair. I mean, it's a lot of work to put together an album.
It is, and I think it's something like, the streaming rates are genuinely absurd. I think it's like $1 for every 1,000 streams.
It's pretty silly.
Which is like...
Yeah. Can we buy a digital copy of your album?
Yes, you can buy a digital copy from iTunes and Amazon. Okay. Yeah, pretty much everywhere music is streamed or sold, or wherever it's on all the things.
Well, thank you so much for doing all this work to bring us the beautiful music.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to connect with you again for part 2, 3, 4. I don't know. I lost track of how many topics.
I know. This is the thing, right? Like,
yeah, we can talk harps forever.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
We'll do a Christmas edition, Halloween edition. We can do.
Right. We should. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what you're gonna do for the holidays.
I know. I thought of that last year. I was like, I've really backed myself into a corner now, because now I've set a precedent for crazy Halloween videos. It may not be 13 this year. I'm just gonna say 13 might be a stretch. It might be less than that.
I think but 1 will be good, or maybe
there will be something.
Maybe you can do 12 days for Christmas. Yeah. I don't know.
We'll see. Well, I'm gonna try to incorporate the album in a sneaky way. That's my hint. We'll see if that happens.
I like that. All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much for the chat, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah. Thanks.